Good afternoon. My name is Simon Townsend. I am the CMO at iGel. First of all, thank you very much for joining our session this afternoon. I trust you are all safe and well and adopting to this new way of work. I have worked in the end user computing industry for about 20 years, helping numerous organizations deploy what we now term the digital workspace down to our users and our employees. And this afternoon, I'd like to spend some time sharing some of my experiences with you and some of the conversations that I've been having over the last 3 to 12 months with numerous different organizations around end user computing, how it's impacting digital transformation, how it's helping organizations with work from home, what does the future of work from home look like, and also, how does technology like virtual desktop infrastructure, desktop as a service, and iGel help transform end user computing for the future, allowing us to be better prepared, but also allowing us to save cost, improve security, and yet deliver a productive, performant digital workspace that is future proof. I'm going to start by talking to you about some conversations I was having with some other CIOs only 12 months ago around digital transformation. I think we all can see digital transformation around us as in the business, but also as consumers, whether it's new banks that have come online, new banking applications, whether it is food or retail services that we are now consuming using IT and technology that is driving the success of those business, or whether it's our own NHS. Information technology can play a very important role in improving the products and the services that we offer our customers as organizations. And for many organizations, they actually want to increase the amount of digital transformation that is being considered. They want to try and spend more time and more money improving the products and the services that they can deliver down to their customers through the use of IT. This is a fundamental change from where IT was, dare I say, 10, 15, 20 years ago. IT has moved for those organizations from being just a supporting function that supports its users and its processes to deliver products and services to actually becoming the product and the service that is being delivered. Around 12 months ago, I shared the following statistics with a number of organizations. This was taken from one of the well-known analyst firms, and it really highlights the amount of IT budget that should be allocated over the course of the last 4 years to digital transformation. Now, I can tell you that for some organizations that is possible. For digital first organizations, their spend is far greater than that. But for many, many organizations out there, we are nowhere near spending 40% of our budget or 40% of our time on digital transformation. And the key question that I always ask people is well, why is that? And what I normally find is that a significant proportion of their existing IT spend and their existing IT time is being spent on managing what they always have managed. And that includes end user computing and the workspace that they have to deploy, manage down to their users. This workspace can be defined very simply by looking at the workspace that we need to deliver, where it needs to be delivered to, and who it needs to be delivered to. 12 months ago, I was having numerous conversations with customers around how that workplace was starting to change. Lots of organizations were looking at removing permanent desks from their employees. They were looking at putting hot desking in place. They were looking at creating huddle rooms and putting IT technology into areas of the office to enable and encourage more collaboration. The workspace is the technology that we are trying to deploy down to our users. The device, the operating system, the applications, the data that we need them to be able to do their job. And lastly, who are we deploying this workspace down to? Well, again, 12 months ago, I was talking to organizations around the next generation of employee that was coming in to their organization. And many were concerned that the workplace and the workspace wasn't designed historically and wasn't now suitable for this new generation of employee that was coming in. But since those conversations, much has changed. And it's not just in the last 3 months with COVID, but we've seen at a global level a number of world events that have taken place that are starting to throw into question what our strategy needs to be when it comes to delivering end user computing and supporting our users and delivering the applications and the desktops that they need to do their job. We've obviously seen in the last 7, 8 to 10 weeks that many employees have been asked and required to work at home where possible. Our users have had to adopt to a new way of working, but we, from an IT point of view, have had to change how we actually deploy that workspace down to those users in that new environment. And the future at the moment around the workplace is very unknown. We don't know whether we're going to go back to normal. We don't know whether we're going to ever return to work. Gartner released a survey highlighting that 74% of CFOs were considering how much of their workforce would ever return to work, followed up with Twitter and Facebook saying that their employees could work from home forever. One thing is for certain is that when we do go back into the office, we're not all going to go back all at the same time. And that means that there will no longer be a separation between working in the office and working at home. There will just be a need to allow people to work and work from anywhere. And that plays and raises an important question when we start to look at how we deliver the workspace. For some organizations, Windows 7 is still very much out there on the endpoint. Recent numbers show that around 20 to 25% of all PCs are still running Windows 7. And whilst it's gone end of life and you can pay for support, it is expensive, and some organizations were only part of the way through doing their migration. When the workspace is running Windows 7 and the workplace is now outside of the office, aka it's at home, it becomes extremely worrying to think that operating systems that have gone end of life are now being used outside of the office to access corporate data and corporate applications. And even those that are on Windows 10 and have made the move to Windows 10 are now starting to see some of the additional challenges that work from home or a distributed workforce brings when things like Windows as a service is in place. Windows 10, Windows as a service, as many of you will know, means that this operating system is updating far more frequently than ever before, every 6 months, in fact. And so there is a question now, which is, again, in a more distributed world, how do we ensure that the operating system of choice on the endpoint is being kept up to date, let alone patched? Which brings me on to the last point, which is around endpoint security. In 2016, the word ransomware became commonplace, mainly because of things like WannaCry. But even in 2020, we are still seeing far too many end user security threats and ransomware attacks take place. And the majority of those continue to be targeted at the user on the endpoint that they are using. And therefore, again, this speaks to a new way and a new need to rethink how we deploy end user computing down to our users. Many organizations have dealt with this over the last couple of months, at least, by using tools and technologies that they may be familiar with and quite rightly using those tools in a way that has allowed them to enable as many employees to work from home as quickly as possible. Checkpoint, Cisco, Fortinet, all of them have seen an increase in the number of licenses that they've sold over the last couple of months as people have increased their use of VPN access. But those solutions weren't necessarily designed to be deployed at scale. They can be very costly. They also don't necessarily suit what the future of work might look like. In a world where I may spend 2 days at home, 2 days in the office, and one day somewhere completely different, I need something that is consistent, performant, but also secure. There are new tools out there, such as unified endpoint management tools or modern management tools that replace PC lifecycle management tools like SCCM. And instead, we've now got tools such as VMware Workspace ONE and the likes of Microsoft Intune. And these tools do give us a way of overcoming some of the challenges that I've spoken to already. But in short, what I'm seeing is an increase in the number of organizations who are actively increasing and evaluating their use of VDI, desktop as a service. So I think that the world is changing, and I think when it comes to end user computing, we are definitely seeing a change that is starting to take place right now. Many of you will remember August 24th, 1995. Bill Gates made a fairly bold announcement that every single desktop PC would be running a Microsoft operating system. And that belief and that statement definitely came true. In fact, over the years, we've obviously seen all of the iterations of Windows that have come along. But actually, whilst they have improved in security, they have improved productivity, they've added new features and functionality, from an organizational point of view, it's actually increased the amount of time and money and effort that we've had to put into managing those devices. And as I said, more recently so with the advent of Windows 10. But if you remember the announcement in 1995, you may not have seen the announcement that Microsoft made last year, towards the end of last year, in fact, when they announced something called WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop. And this, as far as we at IGEL and many folks in the end user computing industry believe, is again a fundamental change to how we are going to deploy the workspace of the future and how we're going to define and start to save time and money when it comes to end user computing. Number one, allowing us to overcome the challenges with the current pandemic, but secondly, to try and allow us to spend more money on things like digital transformation. Windows Virtual Desktop is a service that Microsoft provides that allows you to deploy and manage Windows 10 from the cloud, from the Azure cloud. It's incredibly scalable. It's the cheapest offering arguably to date, and it allows us to centrally manage that Windows desktop and deliver it down to our users regardless of where they will be. But Windows in the cloud or Windows in the data center, or virtualizing Windows to be correct, is not new. And in fact, some of you will have been using VDI, remote desktop services, perhaps for the last 5, 10, 15, if you're like me, 20 years. And organizations such as Citrix and VMware have really led the market in this space. These technologies have allowed us to deploy Windows in a different way for a number of different reasons. But over the last 12 months, we have seen not just Citrix and VMware move from offering on-prem solutions to cloud-delivered solutions, but they've also now been joined by Microsoft, and over the last couple of years have been joined by Amazon with their Amazon Workspaces offering. All of these offer us the ability to deploy Windows desktops in a new way, no longer deploying Windows on the edge, but instead deploying it from the cloud. And there are some significant benefits for doing that. And IGEL believes that VDI, desktop as a service, these cloud delivered workspaces, is the right way to deliver Windows moving forward. And the benefits really come down to, first of all, it being arguably more secure. Your desktop, your applications, your data is being held centrally. Updates can be applied centrally. Patching can be done centrally. New applications can be deployed. Those Windows desktops that are either sat in the data center or in fact sat in the cloud can also be secured far easier, and therefore a lot of organizations believe that VDI and desktop as a service is significantly more secure than putting Windows on the endpoint. The second reason comes down to IT operations and IT efficiency. And a recent survey demonstrates that fact. The number one reason why people look at VDI and desktop as a service is because they want to improve IT efficiency. Coming back to my point of 12 months ago, where organizations are starting to look at this technology to allow them to spend more money on digital transformation. And lastly, to give people access anywhere. I need access to a consistent performant desktop, and using cloud workspaces, VDI, desktop as a service, gives me the ability to do that. Desktop as a service and VDI is changing how we deploy our workspace to our workforce, regardless of what that workplace might look like. But when you move Windows to the cloud, new questions may well arise. And that's where, if I may, I would talk about IGEL for the next 2 minutes. Because the question is, if I've put Windows up into the cloud and my applications are up there and I'm saving time and money, then what do I give my users as their endpoint? What device do my users use to access that new, easier to manage, more secure Windows-based environment? Well, at IGEL, we create an operating system, and it is a purpose-built operating system, something we call the next-gen edge operating system, an operating system that's actually built on Linux. It's incredibly secure. It uses a read-only functionality that means that it is less susceptible to virus attacks and ransomware attacks that I spoke to before. It has and comes with it over 90 integrated technologies, allowing us to connect to Office 365, to connect to Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, Amazon Workspaces, and a whole host of others. And it's designed specifically to allow organizations to reduce the amount of time and money they spend on managing those endpoints. IGEL is also very smart when it comes to investment. IGEL OS will work on any x86 64-bit piece of hardware. So you can take your existing hardware, your existing endpoints that might be running Windows 7, that might be running Windows 10, and we can repurpose that device and we can install IGEL OS on top of it. It only requires 2 GB of RAM. The requirements are very, very small. So it's incredibly performant, but it actually extends the life of your existing hardware investment. So instead of having to worry about purchasing and acquiring new hardware, instead of having to worry about managing those endpoints, you simply take your existing hardware, install IGEL OS on it, and all of a sudden you can have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of devices all under simple management. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to a product we call the UD Pocket. This has become extremely useful in recent weeks and months as organizations have required and had the need to deploy a secure workspace down to their users who have been remote, using devices that perhaps were not on the network, that were not being managed. The UD Pocket is a live USB key that allows a user to take our operating system, plug it into any device, and boot from that USB key and utilize our operating system, leaving the underlying operating system intact. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of you for spending the time with me this afternoon. Um, I hope you can see that, end user computing is going through a change at the moment. BDI, Desktop as a Service, and ourselves are helping organization change how we deliver that workspace to our users. And this isn't just about enabling people to work from home today. This is about a much longer term strategy that will allow people to work from anywhere in the future, ensure that we've got plans in place when it comes to a business continuity, but also reduce the cost and the amount of time that we're spending on deploying end user computing in our organizations. Please feel free to visit our website. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them. Thanks very much.